Get him, guys! Hey everybody, and welcome back. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Field Facts with Forrest. I'm your host, Forrest Carpenter, and today we're going to talk about public land hunting etiquette. We're not only just going to talk about some of the typical do's and don'ts of public land hunting, but we're also going to cover different ways to be courteous to other hunters in the area and talk about some viewpoints that we should probably all kind of get on the same page with when it comes to hunting public land. So whether you've been doing it for 30 or 40 years, or you're fresh to the sport and you want to know what to expect when you go out and try hunting public land, hopefully this answers those questions for you. The first thing I want to talk about is that hunting is very much so a first come, first serve sort of deal. So if you're the first guy there, obviously you get pick of the litter, you get run of the roost, you get to choose where you're going to go, and that's a really big advantage over everyone else that's going to be there. Hopefully you've put in your scouting work in the previous few days. You've got an idea where the birds are, where they want to be, or where you're going to be in best position to have a successful day. And you can go out there and execute the plan that you've thought about all night. If you're not one of the first guys there and you pull in, and for those of you who have been doing it for a while, I know you know the feeling of pulling up to a public spot, seeing other cars in the parking lot, and then figuring out what you're going to be doing for plan B. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to weigh out the value. Is sleep more important to get that extra hour or two, or would you rather go out there and try to put together the most successful hunt you possibly can? So when you get there early, and typically that's my strategy, I would rather lose all the sleep in the world, get there early, be able to kind of run my show the way I want to, or in some cases, I like to be able to take my decoys in and get everything in there before anyone else gets there so they don't know where I'm going, because I hunt in some, well, I put in a lot of work, and I go back into some places where a lot of my friends even curse me for taking them because it's such a pain to get back into. But because I go through that extra effort, I've had that area to myself for about the past decade. So it's not something that people don't see, that they're not around very often. It's just that I put in a little extra work, and people don't get to watch me go in or out and figure out just exactly where I'm hunting. So getting there early obviously has its perks. Now, getting there late, you run the risk of not only having to come up with a plan B or C or D, but also running the risk that there may not even be a spot for you to hunt. And that's something that you should really come to terms with if you're going to take those couple extra hours of sleep and try to push it a little bit closer to sunrise, that on occasion you might show up and not even have a place to hunt. A good example, Nick Courteous and I, we had just gotten back from a trip this last fall, and we went out. We were going to go hunt a public stretch of river here in Colorado, and typically there's no one around late in the season in this area, but there had been some birds in the area, and I wasn't sure if anyone else knew about them or not. So I didn't think there'd be anyone in the area. We didn't get back home until about 2 in the morning, and we had about a 2.5 hour drive to get to where we were trying to go. So we chose to sleep a little bit, rest our weary eyes, because we'd been on the road for a couple weeks, and just roll the dice and see what happens.
What do we got going on?
All right, so getting ready, got everything loaded up on the carts. We got about a mile and a quarter walk in here. We got 20 dozen of the V2Fs and 10 dozen of the M1s all strapped up. And for you guys who don't have all these leases or don't hunt with outfitters all the time, don't hunt over 100 dozen decoys, you know, this is for you too. For these long hikes in, set up on a sandbar, you can make a big spread with a lot less effort than you usually do. Well, wouldn't you know it, we get in there about an hour and a half before sunlight. We get everything loaded up on our game carts. We hiked in, I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of 45 or 50 dozen decoys between silhouettes for Canadas and mallard silhouettes and some floaters. Get in there, hike all the way in about a 1.25 miles-ish, and someone has come in through the backside of the property and beaten us to the spot. Well, as opposed to just sitting up next to them and trying to make a hunt out of it, we worked our way around, tried to find another spot on the river. Unfortunately, there were a couple other groups further downriver, and we weren't able to find a place where we could comfortably fit in without feeling guilty. You know, you kind of get that feeling in your stomach when you just feel too close to the other hunters, and that's something that you should pay attention to, because if you feel like you're too close, I guarantee you the other group of hunters feels like you're too close. So keep that in mind. If you go out like we did, we end up deciding not to even hunt because it would inconvenience everybody else so greatly, because it would just be too many people in too small of an area. And that's something that you just have to kind of accept sometimes. You may have just driven 2.5 hours in our case, but you know, maybe go hit up your breakfast joint just down the road and take advantage of a little bit shorter wait before all the guys are out hunting. Then maybe you can take a nap in the car or something. Maybe you can set up for a midday shoot or an afternoon shoot. In this particular case, we were tired enough, we took it from a sign from above that we just needed some rest. So we hiked everything all the way back out that 1.25 miles back to the trucks, loaded everything up, went home and got some sleep that we were long overdue with. But you know, it's just one of those things that you kind of have to think about and understand that you're risking if you're not going to put in the work to show up super early to these things. One other thing that you can do, we chose not to this day because we didn't want to impose and we weren't that hard up for a hunt, but it is okay if you politely ask someone. Don't go in there and say, hey, I just drove out here and you guys took all the spots, I'm going to hunt with you. But there's nothing wrong with without, you know, carrying your gear out and all that. Maybe just come up to someone politely, because again, you should be there well before shooting light, whether you get there early or late, and politely ask them if you can join them for a hunt. Now, the more people you have in your party, obviously the more of an imposition that's going to be, and you should, you know, try to recognize that and try not to put people out and ask them for too much. But if it's just you and another guy, and you find a guy out there by himself, maybe he would like you know, the extra decoys or an extra hand here or there, or heck, even if you've got a great dog or something, you know, everybody's got something to bring to the table, and as long as you are able to contribute, typically people are fairly open-minded to that. Now on the flip side of that coin, if you notice someone running late or feeling like they're in a pinch, if you've got the space, there's nothing wrong with extending that offer to someone else. You know, invite them over. Or heck, you know, I've been out there and had really killer days by myself. Say I've got my limited ducks here in the first half hour of shooting light. If I notice that someone here behind me or off to the side of me has not had quite the same luck that I have, I've called people over before and had them come sit in my spread. It's a great way to kind of stretch out a good day and to meet some new people. And I can tell you, for those couple guys that I did it just a couple years back, super nice guys, still stay in touch with them. And we try to get at least one hunt together every single year. So kind of keep that in mind as well. Just because you got there early and all doesn't mean that you can't help other people. And the last thing that I want to touch on as far as first come, first serve is, again, be set up by shooting light. And that doesn't mean you're throwing your last decoy out at shooting light and then you got to go back and brush your blinds and make sure everything's all right. You need to make sure that you are ready to go by shooting light, not only for you and obviously optimizing your success, but also to be courteous to other people. There's nothing worse than having done that work, been the first guy that went out there and showed up at 1:30 in the morning to go out and hike in 4 loads of decoys to put out the size of spread you wanted to, and then some yahoo shows up 20 minutes before shooting light, walks out there with a dozen decoys, and come shooting light, he's still spending an extra 5 or 10 minutes of hunting time piddling around in the decoys and flaring birds out of the area in general, because you got to keep in mind, birds are not just working on your spread, they're working an area. They don't see your imaginary boundaries between your hunting spot and your buddy's hunting spot over here and then another guy over here. They're just looking at the area as a whole. And if they see a big moving silhouette that's predator or danger, obviously they're not going to be interested in anybody's spread, or maybe the farthest guy away is going to get a chance at them. So just keep that in mind. Get in there and make sure you're set up and ready to go by shooting light. And while we're on that note of being courteous, that's kind of our next point. You want to be courteous while birds are working other people's spreads. This is one of those things that I wish I could say was common sense, but then you see that common sense isn't so common. There's plenty of times where guys do some really, really, really stupid stuff that will just flat out drive you up a wall. If you're out in the spread, everybody has to make changes, and I'm telling you, 90% of the time, you guys I'm sure will agree, when you go out to move decoys, even if you haven't seen a bird in 3 hours, it's pretty much guaranteed that either if you have to go to the bathroom or if you go to move decoys, that's when the birds are going to show up. So in that circumstance, keep in mind you're not the only hunter there. You have other groups around you, and instead of scurrying back to the blinds to try to get something right, if birds are working other guys' spreads, just stay still. Let them get their chance at the birds and call it good. That's okay. If you don't shoot that bird, or if you don't kill your 3 birds, or say you scotch double and then hit 2 more, your 4 birds, it's not going to make or break your day or your season or your hunting career. So it's better to be courteous, to be a good neighbor, to be a good fellow public land hunter, and just give the other guys the opportunity. Make sure that you're aware of what's going on at all times and keeping your head on a swivel, because again, it's not just your hunt that you could wreck. There could be 5, 6 other guys in the area that you could really mess up their day as well. And if it's a slow day, every opportunity counts. Don't overcall when you've got a bunch of birds working. If you've got someone who's working a flock of ducks, maybe they broke down on you initially and they circled once or twice, but now they've meandered over and they're working another guy a couple 100 yards away. Don't just sit there and ride on your duck call, pleading for those ducks to come back, come back, come back. Let them have another chance. Not only does it sound less realistic when you're sitting there sounding like a marching band blowing on a duck call, but it's extremely discourteous to the other guy who went over there, and he may not have put as much work in, or he may not know any better, but this is kind of his opportunity. Now, if the birds work their way around, and there's nothing wrong with calling at the ducks, but wait until they work back to their point where they're closest to you. Not only will that give you your best chance of being heard, or having what you're saying to the ducks mean something and actually turning them back to your spread, but it also lets that guy know that you're not just there to ruin his hunt, you're just trying to kind of play the game fairly. Another thing that I've seen, speaking of duck calls, with stuff like that, duck or goose calls, even if you're hunting in a field adjacent to someone, I have heard people on days, especially where we're really getting after them and we're kind of shutting everybody else down because the birds are liking what we've got to offer. Don't make weird noises or just, blow your goose call like a party horn or something in an effort to scare the other birds. That's as low as it gets. That's when you know that you need to kind of reconsider why you're out there. If you can't go hunting and let other people take advantage of their opportunities, you should kind of think about why it is that you hunt. Because if it's just to go out there and compete and make sure that everyone knows you're top dog, that's not really what it's all about. I'm not going to tell you who to be or what hunting is or isn't about. I guess I kind of did there, but this is something that we're all on the same team. We're all on the same page, and we're trying to be good advocates for the sport. We don't need to be fighting and really neck and neck in each other. And there's something to be said about some playful competition. And I'm as competitive as can be too. I may not have made it as far as Asher, but I played some professional baseball. I'm extremely competitive, and I hate being beaten. But that's something to deal with internally, as opposed to trying to take out on the guys who are having a great day. Let them have a great day. The sooner they're done, and the sooner they get their limit, then they're out of your hair, and then you don't have to deal with them. Or they're walking around in their decoys, and the birds are more likely to come over to where you are. So just kind of keep that in mind, and just don't be that guy. Don't try to flare birds, and another thing that kills me, don't take long crack shots. If you've got a group of 5 birds, you see, again, that maybe there's that one group who's just really crushing them this day, and you haven't gotten a shot. If you see a group of birds working in over there, but you get one that peels out over you at 60 or 70, man, let it go. They're working some birds. Again, let them shoot their birds and then get out, and then you're going to not only have more opportunities, but then you're not going to be that guy. Don't take those long shots in an effort to combination get your bird, but also flare the birds off of them because you're sick of seeing them shoot them. Trust me, I've been there. It's super frustrating when you just can't win, but that's how it goes sometimes. Heck, if it's driving you that nuts, pack it up, call it a day, come back tomorrow. It's a completely different ball game. You know, as in waterfowling as well as I do, that every day is different from the last. Heck, maybe even come out that afternoon and see if your luck's changed. But don't be discourteous to others. Let them have their hunt. They're more likely to let you have your hunt. And if you can talk in the morning to kind of let them know what page you're on, it's not a bad deal. If you can open a line of communication, then you're going to be more likely to have positive interactions with these other hunters in the field. Another thing that I want to talk about here is downwinding or swing shooting. Now, typically, this comes from the guy who's shown up a half hour before light. He finds the biggest spread and then goes and sits downwind of where they're hunting. So when the birds come out and come on their swing and they work back in and make their turn to work back in towards the decoys, they're sitting right under them and they shoot the birds coming into someone else's decoys. Guys, if you're one of those guys, don't be. All right, that's not cool. That is one of the things that will fire people up, and I have seen 3, maybe 4, depending on your definition of a fight, at least 4 altercations caused by swing shooting. And you know, if you go out there and someone showed up and they brought 100 dozen decoys and it covers 3/4 of this little public pond, and now you can't get someplace to hunt, again, this is one of those times where instead of going out there and trying to force something or squeeze in there in a place, don't try to make something happen. Just kind of count your losses, go back home, and get there earlier next time. Because it gets pretty ugly. I've seen fists get thrown. You know, guys are walking out of the hunting place with black eyes, and especially when we're talking about an environment where hopefully we're all level-headed enough to understand that just because we're dealing with firearms doesn't mean those get included. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't seen someone walk out there to an altercation with a shotgun. So things get really heated, and it's not too difficult to see these things get escalated to a point that you really don't want to go to. So swing shooting and shooting birds that are working other people's decoys is not only discourteous, it can be flat out dangerous. And especially if they're really working in tight to someone and you try to shoot a bird on a swing, odds are you're going to pepper them, or if not them, maybe another group around them. So you need to be super conscientious of what the birds are doing. Hunting public land is a great way to learn how to read birds, but just because the birds might be closest to you, you know, they might be 30 yards over the top of you when you shoot, if they're banking hard with their wings cupped to go back to the guy that they've just circled 4 times, those aren't your birds. You know, it's frustrating, but again, let them shoot their birds, suck it up, keep trying, but don't do anything to intentionally spoil their hunt, because man, sometimes you just lose, and you got to kind of accept that. On that same note, I want to talk about a perception that a lot of people have. Yes, all of us are public landowners, and that is the best thing about public land. It's there for us, it's there for our enjoyment. We can go out and do all these wonderful things, and we can enjoy the sport of waterfowling out on this public land that we all pay for tax-wise. Keep in mind, you in your own self, you are not the only owner of that land, and that everybody out there has an equal right to be there. Right back to that first come, first serve sort of thing. Just because you may be local and these guys are out of town, if they got there first, they have every right to be there. I've had some bad experiences down and I hate to call out Arkansas, but man, I've met some people who are really rough on out-of-state hunters down there at Arkansas, And when it comes down to it, those woods are no more yours than anybody else's. And I know I'll probably catch some flack for saying that, but if you came to Colorado and came to hunt the South Platte, I would extend a courtesy to you and let you know that, hey, you're welcome to come up. This is great. I'm glad you guys made the trip. Come up here and enjoy this experience. Guys are trying to do the same thing down there in Arkansas or anywhere else in the country. Whether it's, you might be way out in the middle of nowhere, and man, these guys from, like, for us, it's guys from Denver coming out, and man, it's all these Denver guys coming out, and man, they're clogging up all these public spots. But you know what? That's okay. That's what it's there for. And if you don't like it, that's public land for you. So find some private land. And I know, again, I'm probably stepping on some people's toes, and you're probably getting some weird feelings in your stomach. But if you just take a step back and think about it, this isn't just yours. This is here for everybody. We're here to be good ambassadors of the sport and to make sure that we can prolong the life of this sport as long as we can. And in a heated political climate like we have, the last thing we need to do is be butting heads and be fighting each other on this stuff. We need to be on the same page and rallying together. And even though I'm not saying you have to, go out there and hug everybody by any means, but we need to kind of understand that we're all on the same team. We need to be a united front just in general these days as outdoorsmen. So be respectful, treat people well, and if you have a problem with someone and something they've done, say you've got someone that swing shot you, instead of going out there with your shotgun over your shoulder and taking your gloves off and rolling your sleeves up like you're getting ready for a third period hockey brawl, instead go at it from a teaching side of things, because they may not have any idea what etiquette is on public land. I mean, there's all sorts of places where you can find a lack of etiquette, whether it's guys boating on the lake, or I was just fishing the other day and I had a kid literally walk between me and my backpack that was 2 feet behind me, step over the hole I was fishing, and not even say a word to me the whole time. I mean, it's guys like that who may very well, while frustrating as it is, they may not know any better. So instead of going over there, cussing them out, making it a really negative, frustrating, overall unhealthy experience for everybody, be calm, be cool-headed, and try to make it a teaching experience. Instead of going out there and scolding someone, teach them. Try to help them become a better hunter. And maybe invite them to hunt with you next time. Or if you see someone that's going out there 15 minutes before shooting light and they look like they're going to downwind you, ask them about it then. Don't wait for the middle of a hunt when you get that big wad of lessers coming in, or that big flock of mallards with a couple nice pintails that someone does something they shouldn't have. Don't be shy about this stuff. Don't be rude, but don't be shy to go over there and ask someone, hey, are you planning on hunting there, or are you just kind of looking around? And if they say, oh, I was thinking about hunting here, maybe call them over to you. And while you may not have planned for having another person, or it may be tough to hide them, it's probably going to work better for you to just invite them to come hunt with you, as opposed to sending them off on their own and hoping that they don't get greedy on a flock and swing shoot you or something like that, and ruin your best flock of the day. Just some things to think about there. So really, that's all I wanted to talk about today here when we're talking about public land etiquette. Again, first come, first serve. If you want it to go your way, get there early. Put in the work, scout, know where you're gonna go. Don't piddle around in the morning, go straight to where you wanna be. Get your stuff together out of the truck, go to your spot, put your stuff down. Now it's yours. Then you can go back and forth and do whatever you need to, take a nap. Heck, it doesn't matter. If you're set up out there, then you're in good shape. If you're not, be okay with the fact that you may not have a place to hunt. Roll up there with zero expectations. Be hopeful, but don't expect to get the spot that you want. Make sure that you're set up before shooting light. Be courteous while other birds are working other people's spreads. Again, don't be moving around, causing a whole bunch of ruckus or commotion, trying to flare birds from other guys. Make sure you don't swing shoot anybody and don't downwind other people. And then again, be courteous. Think about where other people are coming from, and instead of scolding them if they do something wrong, try to make it a teaching experience, because again, nobody is perfect. A lot of these guys don't have any experience, and just try to keep that in mind. So thanks again for joining me here for another episode of Field Facts with Forrest. I hope you enjoyed it. What I'd like you to do, continue to keep sending those questions in. If you feel like, just because it's been a few months and you think all the questions have been asked, I promise you, I get new questions about every day. So send me an email. I'm happy to not only for the best questions, I'm going to cover them here on the show. And again, it may take a while because this series is going to go on. But I'll not only try to answer it on the show, but I'll send you an immediate response as best as I can to just cover your question, answer it thoroughly. Typically, they're 4 or 5 paragraphs. I take about 45 minutes to an hour on each email to just kind of think things through and try to give you the best answer I can. So please submit those questions to Forrest, Forrest, at diebombindustries.com, and I'll try to get to them. Now, again, if you wouldn't mind, go down below, like and subscribe, hit that bell so you can get alerts for when these episodes come out, because I'm trying to put them out. We'll keep them coming every 2 weeks, and we'll keep the information coming for you. Thanks again for watching.